You have it ready, Crystal, you can share.
I do, I can do it. I can do it. I just wasn't sure who was going to do it.
Oh, okay.
I am going to do it.
No problem. You go for it, Crystal.
Here we go. One agenda.
All right.
Wow.
All right. Okay, so the Accreditation Policy Committee of the PCC Board is now called to order. Is there any comment on the, are there any comments on the non-agenda items?
No such comment.
Okay, so let's take Board Bylaw 2100 first. Are there any comments from the trustees?
No. Straight.
No, okay, so I do have one question. So where we talk about the responsibility of the board to this down a bit, trustee areas, and that we have, we try to get them in equal numbers of constituents. So one of the things that came up 10 years ago when we had the census was forming communities of interest. And I do think it is important for us, you know, especially in light of DEI, and for us to look at all DEI, all of the policies with the DEI lens, that we think about how you form communities of interest when we have, when we look at the demographics. So,
Would that be part of redistricting then? Or
Yeah.
is what, and would the redistricting effort be something that we are undertaking at this time?
well,
So,
the census is
Crystal?
coming up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Crystal, do you want to talk about what has been done in the past, how we approach that?
Yes, so what we will do when we get notification from the county that the numbers are ready,
Mhm.
that we hired an outside consulting organization called Redistricting Partners, who come in and this is what they do. And they look at the entire district, the populations, they run all the numbers. And then what they will do is bring the board several different options for the structure of the trustee areas. We also do some work where they'll put it on our website. Well, we'll take out third-party comments on the various trustee areas, and then the board actually gets the final decision. But it's very clean for us to use an outside organization because they're objective, they'll just bring it in. But if this is something, like if you want to do what Trustee Weil was talking about, you could instruct the consultant to look at that for you.
I think in light of DEI, I think it is important for us to have that view. So it is under number 6, the board requested boundary adjustments. So it's not just looking at the numbers and getting equal numbers, but also where there is potential to form communities of interest. I think it's important. I think Tony has the largest community of interest that we designated last time, which is an API group. John was the second largest, and I'm sure that different areas have now changed. But I think it would be important for us to maybe put some wording in there as part of our policies.
I'm not so sure you need to put it in here, but when we go out for the proposal to get a consultant to do this, you could put that specifically in the proposal that you want them to look at communities of interest for you.
Okay, so this normally would not be under the board policy. We would not, that would not be like one of our values, Crystal, that we would want to talk about.
I don't necessarily think you need to include it in a board bylaw, but I definitely think you should include it in an RFP for a consultant.
Okay, any responses from the other trustees?
Crystal,
Okay.
so that means we don't need to have redistricting be part of the bylaws, or is a board requested boundary adjustment? Is that alluding to redistricting?
Yeah, that is
Okay.
alluding to redistricting.
Okay.
Right, and
Thank
by
you.
law, you do have to look at redistricting according to the census. So that's
Right.
a law.
Yeah, all districts have to be almost equal in number.
Yeah, I just am recalling that speaking to one district, they were surprised to hear that they should be looking at communities of interest as they look at redistricting. And that's one of the reasons, you know, if we don't say it, is that one of our, does that become one of our values or not? And as you know, the Latino community has been asking whether or not we could form a community of interest, Latino community of interest, although they seem to be kind of spread around, so it's kind of hard to do that.
I think in some areas you can't jigger boundaries to make things like the supervisorial districts had a problem. So that's another.
Yeah, we were meeting with our local lobbyist today and he was explaining the supervisor problem and talk about a house of cards.
Was Gloria Molina's district was a mess.
Yeah. Well, it's about to be a Sheila Kuehl mess.
Yeah. I think by law now, because the LA Laxton just did the redistricting discussion yesterday. And I think by law now that you cannot gerrymander, or you would be subject to complaints, I guess, if you gerrymandered.
And that's one of the reasons I'm not sure you'd want to put it in a board bylaw,
Mhm.
but you would put it in an RFP so that it would be something a consultant was looking at for you.
Yeah, that's a good point, Crystal.
Okay. All right. So this one looks good. Next.
Next up, you have the annual organizational meeting, which needs some adjusting because of your new election.
Okay, Crystal, we can't see it.
Yeah,
Right.
I know, I'm still looking for it. I'm
Okay,
working,
I was
I'm
gonna
working hard.
say, just to make sure you know, we don't. we're not-
I'm trying to find it.
No problem.
Yeah, we have a problem here.
Hang on one second, I'm looking
Okay.
for it. Okay, here it is. All right, can you see it now?
Not
Nope.
yet.
Okay. Let me stop that. Let me try again. Here we go. Found it. How's that?
Okay, so the problem that we have is that 4 of you get elected in June and the other 3 get elected in March. And so the start of the annual meeting then, at least in some years, potentially cuts somebody's service in a leadership position down to 9 months, or it adds months, depending on when you're elected. So that's one of the problems we have, because if you're elected in March, you take office in April. If you're elected in June, you take office in July. But if you started as board president in March, and then if that's when we did the annual meeting, but then you lost election in June, because who is the officer doesn't necessarily correspond with whether or not they just got reelected, or in the reverse. So you either have somebody getting a 3-month term because then they get voted out, or a 1-year term based on the fact that the annual organizing meeting for 2 years would be in July, or you wind up with a short term because the annual organizing meeting is in April in presidential primary years. See the problem?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So what are you proposing here?
You know,
We're
we're not proposing anything. We are turning it over to you because this
Okay.
is your leadership option. So we're just telling you it needs to get fixed, because we have a problem once the June 22 elections happen.
Mhm.
We'll have a problem, because technically, based on your current policy or
Mhm.
board bylaw, you all will have done your annual organizing meeting in April. And
Right.
that's when Linda will become president, if you go along the lines. But then she's up for election in June. Well, if she doesn't win election in June, then even if she does win election in June, you have to have another annual organizing meeting in July, because that's when she and the other 3, you and
Berlinda and Tony.
Berlinda and Tony, would then take office. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this
What
is,
are the?
Yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead.
it seems
Sorry.
to me that if we just set a date, regardless of when people get elected, and that becomes our organization meeting, So why, but then that we'd have to go back to our bylaws, right? Isn't there a bylaw that when people take office, then they immediately, don't we have a different bylaw that covers this also?
I actually think it's the one that we just looked at on
Yeah, it's the one
elections.
we just looked at.
Oh, is it? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So if we just make the annual organization meeting a standard date, regardless of when the elections take place.
Yes, you could
Yeah,
do
let's
that.
just do that.
Well, so is it gonna be April or is it gonna be June, July?
But what you're saying too, Erica, is that for someone, let's say if we set the annual organization meeting in April or whichever date it is, for those who are elected in June, they may get a shorter term as
Yeah.
an officer right? So, and somebody would get a longer term as
Mhm.
an officer. So the question to us is that, are we okay with that? Even if we set that organization meeting? So
You
it
have the
doesn't matter
same
what,
if you have the same organization meeting date, everybody gets the same time. The
Yeah.
problem is now the way it reads is we have our organization meeting like a month after people get elected. So
Right.
we have to change this to have a standard or a date for the organization meeting. So I would say that we should do it in July. So do it to reorganize in June and then take office in July.
Yeah, and then that's almost the fiscal year, that's the end of it. So that's
Yeah,
good.
just handle it by the fiscal year.
yeah. I agree.
So and you can do that. The only thing is that you would wind up potentially with somebody being sworn into the board if they win in the March election. They have to get sworn in, so they would get sworn in April, and then they would just be a regular board member, no officer,
Yeah,
until the
July meeting.
July meeting when the organization happens.
Yeah, and I think that's okay.
Okay, is that what you all want to recommend?
Do you
No, that's
think
what I
that we need
recommend.
to talk to the other trustees? Can
This
we
is gonna
bring
go before the full board, so.
Yeah,
this
it
is
has to go to the full
subcommittee.
board anyway.
board? Okay,
Okay,
yeah, I think that's a good, Linda.
Okay, all right.
So basically, I'm going to leave it as is, and then
Yes.
we will take it up with the full board about
Correct.
the caveats involved with the two different election months.
Right.
yes,
Okay. Super.
okay.
Okay, so the next one we're going on to is BB 2720, which is communications amongst the board. And I'm going to just say I got a little overzealous on this one. Happens. And I should not have crossed out the second paragraph. We need to keep it, but it's the third paragraph that is new, recommended by the league, which talks about social media.
So the second paragraph stays, that should not
Yes.
have been crossed out.
Yeah,
So really
sorry.
what you're reviewing is the third paragraph.
Right, the
Yeah.
bolded one, yeah.
Okay, so are there any questions from the trustees?
so my question is, so for example, Tony posts something on Facebook, right? About, and then so we are not going to, the other trustees cannot comment on his Facebook posting, but the Facebook posting has to be related to something that's been discussed at the board meeting.
Right,
Right.
Right.
So
to a
he posted
decision.
Yeah.
If he just
posted
posts
a
his
picture of
vacation,
his-
we don't care.
Yeah,
Right,
not relevant.
okay.
Tony, you have any questions?
No, I think it's fine.
Okay.
So I do have one question. So I think somewhere in there, it said something about this does not construe as preventing an employee or official of the district from engaging in separate conversations or communications with members of the board outside. So I think that was, so that was always in there. So
Yes.
maybe we had overinterpreted it before where no one could have any conversations with anyone. So now this is the one that you had crossed out previously, Crystal?
Yes, I had crossed out the second paragraph, but we actually need to keep the second paragraph and just add the third.
So the only thing is at the end where it says, if that person does not communicate to members of the board, the comments or position of any other board members, but how can you control a non-elected person who has a conversation with a board member?
Well, I can't.
I don't know that any of us can. That's what I'm asking. I mean, why does it make sense to put that in there if we can't? I mean, I'm not sure what that does.
Well, I think it's important because, you know, like Linda, when you ask questions and you ask a question, let's say of Cynthia, and you CC me, if this weren't here, then somebody could say, why is a trustee interacting with a college employee or asking a question? The question may or may not relate to something that could be coming up, but otherwise, I think what it's saying is you do have a right to interact. It's not going to prevent an employee from having a conversation with you outside of a meeting in order to answer questions. You know what I mean?
So
This gives
yeah,
more
so I
flexibility
understand
to
that.
the employee. This gives more flexibility.
So I
I think
understand
there's-
that. I understand that, but this is my question. So it's the last 2 lines on the paragraph. So what it then says is the employee can then have that communication with the board as long as that person does not communicate to the members of the board the comments of other board members. That means they can't say, okay, I talked to trustee A and this is what they said. So what do you think? So I get that, but how would we control that? I mean, there's nothing
Well,
that we could really do about that.
but except that it's in your board bylaw. So you've articulated that this is your expectation. So then the next part of that is making sure that I'm the one who takes responsibility to make sure that my folks understand that when they're interacting with you to answer a question or whatever, that they're not supposed to say to you, oh, that's a really good question. You know, Trustee Chen Lao asked the same question. And here's what I said, and here's what she said. That they shouldn't do. And one of the ways that I try to model that is that when you all ask questions from the board agendas, I send out your questions without any attribution. So nobody on my executive team or anybody answering questions has any idea who asked what question. And I purposefully do that because I want to avoid any problem with something like this. Because then, potentially one of my folks could say, oh, well, I already answered this for the other trustees and they said, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So it's not anything that you're controlling. It's more everybody is aware that somebody saying, oh, yes, and I already answered this for another trustee and they said X could be construed to be a serial conversation, and we need to avoid that.
Okay, so it serves as notice then to the non-elected members. Okay.
Exactly. This is notice to the non-elected. Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I could tell you some doozies that just happened with certain meetings by the mayor of Los Angeles. I don't want to get into it because it aggravates me so much.
Oh, no.
They should be honoring this, and it's just sleazy.
Yeah, big time politics. Okay, well, okay, if the other trustees have no other questions, let's go ahead. This one looks okay. Let's go on.
So our next one is the professional ethics of the classified staff. We asked the classified senate to look at this, and this is where they chose to go.
And what is the genesis of this change?
Well, it is part of our accreditation process that we do have codes of ethics. At this particular campus, instead of having one general, each of the constituent groups have their own. So the classified have theirs, the management have theirs, the faculty have theirs. This one is for the classified, and I asked them to review it because it was time, and they came back and gave me sort of a rewrite.
Yeah, and it says it's an ACCJC accreditation standard. So that's what you would refer to. So Tony, you have any questions?
No, that's fine.
All right, no other questions, Sandra?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm okay with this. Go
Okay.
ahead.
And the next one we're going to do is
Integrated planning.
Integrated planning, yes, sorry, integrated planning, here it comes, integrated planning. Here we go, okay. So what we did to this is we added the vision and core values. We also added the college's commitment to equity, anti-racism, shared governance. And then we listed out the plans required by law, including but not limited to. And then we put in the language of that these plans will be brought, those plans that are required to will be brought to the Board of Trustees for approval as required by Title V.
So this is 3250, is that correct?
Yes, this is
Okay.
3250 integrated
Yeah.
plan.
Okay, any questions from the trustees? Tony?
No,
Oh, go ahead, Sandra?
Yes. Are these plans, what is the timeline for these plans? Are these plans brought in every 3 years or it just whenever it's needed? What is there a time?
They vary. You know, facilities master plans tend to be longer.
Yeah.
Because of
10
the
years.
time frame required. The technology master plan could go either way. It could be a 5-year. Most likely now we do them in 5 years because technology changes so rapidly. The chancellor's office lets us know about the equal employment opportunity plan and when we have to revise that. And I think that's usually like 3 years.
Yeah,
Student equity has been like every 2, I think.
every 2 years, yeah.
Yeah. So
So in the integrated planning process, we don't need to put the time frame in there. It's just that there is a planning process in place.
Right.
Okay. Thank
Okay, any
you.
other questions? So I have a question.
sure.
On the bolded paragraph,
Mhm.
on the first bullet, it says the long-range educational academic master plan shall be updated periodically as deemed necessary. Why is that, why is that only, or that,
That's
the-
the one, that is actually the language from CCLC in the template policy.
so why wouldn't why wouldn't the board also update other plans as necessary? Why only that one? I guess that was my
But-
question.
Very good question, but that's the way they wrote it in the template.
But so that's
But-
the recommended language, but we could alter it because it just
Sure,
seems
sure.
weird that we would only call that out and not the other plans out.
Well, let me just be specific because we just talked about this, is the student equity plan, they give us that one. The
Mhm.
equal employment, they give us that one. So the only ones that would apply to would be the technology and the facilities. Because those are the ones that we set the timelines for.
So do you want to include technology and facilities in the same?
I think
or
we have
no?
to, I think we have to do research on that, Crystal, because I think we are required to have a new facilities master plan or at least submit something to the state. Don't we have to do it like every 5 years or something?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
A facilities master plan?
I
Well,
thought we did.
no, just a facilities plan,
Plan.
but maybe not a master plan.
Yeah,
But the EEO, okay, that's a set time when we have to do
Right.
that. The Technology master plan goes before the board, so that's according to our own local
Yeah,
states.
I don't know. Well, and the facilities master plan can be as long as we want, but there's also physical facilities, something.
yeah. Do
Mhm.
you want
I
us to
don't-
do some
Yeah,
background on
let's
that?
do some research.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it would be good to look at that one a little more and
And we could also ask the league why they call out the EMP and not anything else.
right.
Sure.
Yeah,
We can ask.
Can we still move this forward or do you want us to hold it for that?
I think you should hold it until you bring back additional information.
Okay, no worries, we can do that. The next one we're gonna do is the academic calendar. Philosophy and criteria, blah, 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 technical. Where is the academic calendar? Oh my gracious, what happens to these things? Okay,
By the way, Erica, thank you for getting that through. As you know, many of the trustees have asked for this. It's in the best interest of our students, but I know you've gotten pushback.
Yeah, we're dealing with a PERB complaint, but we're working our way through it. Our calendar next year reflects the fall, spring, summer.
good.
Yeah.
So there are no changes to this, no recommended changes. It came through the Academic Senate instruction. This is just that it's up for review. It's time.
That this is up for review. We're not making,
There are no recommended changes to it.
Changes. And
okay,
it's been
Right.
through the academic senate, right?
Yes, and it was last reviewed in 2010, so it's been 11 years, so it's time. And there are no recommended changes.
Okay, so this is carrying forward what we approved for the 2022, 21.
It has nothing to
year.
do with what you actually approved. It's
Okay.
just sets out the fact that that I have the responsibility to work with constituent groups to recommend an academic calendar to you for approval.
okay.
That's all it does.
And
Doesn't have
you,
the details.
and you mentioned that you're working through the PERB complaint. There's a hearing coming up?
In
Has that been in August? Okay. The date has been set or?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay,
And just for you to know, Erica, so Sandra has let the other trustees know about the PERB complaint, so it might be something at some point that you want to give a briefing to the board about. I'm not sure that we've heard all of it. But it's
Yeah.
aside from this, okay,
Okay?
we're good.
All right, the next one we're gonna look at is the philosophy and criteria for associate degree in general education. There we go. This was done by CNI and put through the Academic Senate. They just made some little edits for clarification purposes. They added the word think critically, apply principles of science, and then they changed society to social.
So any of the other trustees have any questions on this? Any issues?
Better.
You're okay, Tony? Sandra?
yeah.
Okay,
I just want to bring up a point that when we talked about the PERB complaint, that was discussed in closed session. So what I shared with the trustees was in closed session. I just want to make sure that we are clear on that. So I'm not exactly comfortable that now it's in a public meeting that we're talking about that. So
okay,
Yeah.
go on.
Yes. So noted.
thank you.
Good, okay. I'm gonna go on to 4102, which is career and technical education programs. Find that one. There we go. This too was, this was worked on by a subcommittee of the Academic Senate and Executive Director Kumo. And then it was put through the Academic Senate and through shared governance. And what they wanted to do was just have a clear definition of the membership of the advisory committees. I think I got that right.
I think this is very good.
Yeah, I thought it was good too. So any other comments? Okay, move on.
I shall move on.
Sorry, didn't mean to do that.
No, it's fine. And I'm gonna go right
Trying
on
to keep
to,
rolling here.
I'm moving on to course repetition. Okay. Simple adjustment on this one is they are removing including an FW, which is the failure to withdraw. And this has gone through the Academic Senate and I think this went through CNI and then to the Academic Senate and then to College Council and I.
Okay, any other questions from the trustees?
Yeah, so is this part of this because of distance learning that we can that would be considered under special circumstances?
No, this is
No.
just removing that symbol because I don't believe we include it anyway. It's like a failure to, I think what we looked at a failure to withdraw was giving a student an F, and I don't think we do that anymore. We'll
Right.
change that FW to a W. So that's
Right.
really not considered a substandard grade, a W.
Okay,
Right. You used to be able to assign a grade to somebody who had withdrawn.
mhm,
We don't do that anymore because it's not relevant.
okay,
Every student has a maximum of 3 enrollments in a class. Whether they withdraw from the class, they can, you know, they can repeat for a substandard grade and no more than 3. It used to be that a student could withdraw from the same class 4 times and could repeat the class 3 times to replace a substandard grade. But when Title V was updated, they got rid of that down to a single 3 enrollments in a single class. Where it says under special circumstances, students may repeat courses in which a C or better was earned. That usually pertains to individuals who, for example, took anatomy and physiology 7 years ago, but they're trying to get into a nursing program, which requires recency of having had that class within 5 years of applying to the nursing program. So that's an example where you would be able, where a student would be able to enroll in a class for which they got a C or better and earn and retake the class. So that's all that refers to.
Okay, any other questions? Okay,
Okay.
next.
The next one is BP 5030, which is fees. And back when Jessie was still our internal auditor, she came to me and said that this is a required BP that we need to have on the books. So she put it together for me and walked it through shared governance. And this basically would outline for any student what the various things that we will charge fees for or can charge fees for.
Okay,
So as you can see, there's enrollment, course auditing, student health,
Parking.
instructional materials, physical education, student representation, student activity, transcript, all these things.
Do these fees ever change? Like, I mean, it's we're not putting amounts on them, but do some of these fees continue to, do they ever come off of this list, or is this?
Well, they don't come off of the list. They usually get adjusted, but that's why you don't see an amount. For example, the enrollment fee, you know, I started in California in 2000, and the enrollment fee has been anywhere from 11 to 13 to 15 to 23 to 43 to 40 to the current 46. So if we specified it here, we'd have to keep coming back to revise the board policy to include what the fees are. Most of these, I would say all of these fees are fees that are never going to go away. They just might get adjusted up or down.
And as you can see in like the student health fee, it specifies that we bring it to you for approval.
Yes.
So it's just present to the board for approval. Same thing with the parking. So a lot of them, they automatically come to you for approval before they get adjusted.
Right.
Erica, can I ask you a stupid question?
There are no stupid questions, trustee Phillips.
Now, mostly in California now, we're saying we give like 2 years of free education. Correct?
Well, if you meet criteria, yes.
Okay.
But what it means is your enrollment fees are waived.
Okay.
And that's through AB 19 if you meet certain criteria. And so the fees are waived. So you may pay so let's say that you are not eligible for a college success or a board of governors waiver. You pay your fees, and then once classes start, we go through and figure out who's full-time, who's done all of the orientation, advising, and who's done everything that's required, and we give them their money back.
Okay, will that be, so all of these fees that are here, the technology, do they get that back, or is it just?
No, it's just enrollment fees.
Okay.
It's not the other fees.
So everybody, like somebody like me, if I enrolled at PCC, I don't meet the criteria, correct?
No, you do not meet the criteria.
As a matter of fact, really, people like me should pay more.
Well, you know, that was tried in 1984 and it was a huge disaster. I wasn't in the California Community College system at the time. I was a student at Northridge, but I do recall if you already have a bachelor's degree, you have to pay $50 a unit. And that was a unmitigated disaster.
Yeah.
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 And there's been talk of doing that again. And you know, if you look at the ethos of California Community College, it's really about access. And so there are lots of reasons people might have a bachelor's degree and come back to do a nursing degree, come back to do all kinds of things. And the idea of a penalty because you might happen to have already had a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's political suicide.
So, Erica, when we talk about like four-year universities, like free college, which they talk about in Washington, the president talks about it. So they're really talking about people with their standards, like income. Is that because everybody's not going to get free education?
Right. As I understand, a lot of the specifics of the free tuition have not been worked out. But my understanding is if they were to go forward with that system, it would involve the states. And states would have to basically agree that they're going to participate in the free college tuition. Or, and in our case, in the community colleges, I think we would be ahead of the game versus other states, because we already have a pretty sophisticated process with the Board of Governors waiver, with the College Promise and all of that. The question would be, how much of the enrollment fees would California be able to capture back from the federal government? And probably what it would mean is that some of the criteria that we use, like full-time, I'm not sure that President Biden and Congress have been thinking about it as you must be full-time. Right now, you have to be full-time. It's one of my biggest criticisms of the Chancellor's office, because they beat us over the head and say you need to do things for part-time students, and then they turn around and make the criteria for all of these programs full-time enrollment. So a lot would have to be worked out, but I think we would be in really good shape to access a federal program that way quickly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's so many details that have not been worked out.
I know, Carol Liu, when she was in office, she pulled me aside one day because we were talking about free education. She said, Tony, how could you have free education? Who's going to pay for the lights? Who's going to pay for the lights? And made sense to me.
The taxpayers. Okay, well, if the trustees don't have any other questions, I do have some questions. So on the parking,
Yeah.
who actually does everyone do, employees, faculty, as well as students,
Yes.
pay for parking?
Yes,
Okay.
everyone.
Apparently, we're one of the few colleges that does that. I was really
We are.
surprised to hear that.
Yes, we
Yay,
are.
good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, then will you call out the international student fees? Don't we also charge for out of state, but I don't see that listed. Don't we also? Isn't
Those
there?
are just non-resident fees.
Oh, okay.
But I
But-
think
But it's not in here, right? The non-resident fees? I didn't think I saw it.
it says, additionally, the fee cannot be more than 50% of the non-resident tuition fee. Well, the non-resident tuition fee, we don't, what do you think, Crystal? I don't know if we
Couldn't
would,
that have been in there if it's also I mean, aren't we talking about
Hmm.
the enrollment fees?
I'm thinking.
yeah. I think it's kind of not spoken, but kind of within the enrollment fee, but I wonder if we need to have a separate one that says non-enrollment fee. Or I'm sorry, non-resident fee.
Yeah.
What do you think, Crystal?
You know what? Let me talk to Jessie and see.
Okay.
She wrote this
Okay.
and
Then I
I
have
trust
another,
her judgment.
okay, no problem. And then,
Okay.
okay, so let's leave this one on the books until you get back to us.
Yeah,
And then I do have another question. Then on the credit by exam fee,
yeah.
so does this put us, or does this impact the disadvantaged students if we have a credit by exam? So now we're charging because, I don't know, I guess the administrative fee for people who don't want to just be placed according to last grade received in high school before they matriculated over to us?
No,
or-
no, that's not credit by exam. Credit
Oh,
by
okay.
exam is, I think I know, because of my work as a human services assistant, I think I know everything I need to know about Psychology 101. So I'd like to earn credit by exam for that. So a faculty member creates an exam, a person takes it. If you pass it, you get 3 units of credit, but you have to pay for those credits. This has nothing to do with placement in classes.
So we would, so if it's a 3-unit class, we would charge them $46 a unit.
Times 3.
Yeah, and they pay us that instead of having to take the class.
Instead of taking the class, they're paying for credit. Okay.
Right.
So does this in any way, so it's still back to the question though, does this in any way impact the disadvantaged populations that may come to us?
Well, my guess is if they had their enrollment fees waived, this would be waived as well.
Right. But I don't know that we could have a threshold where we don't charge for this. Because that would be, I mean, Title V does say that we need to charge enrollment fees.
So why is this fee waived if they don't have if we then waiver their enrollment fees? Why is only this particular? So, I mean, we wouldn't waive their library fee. We wouldn't waive their IT fees. So why is credit by exam fee waived?
Well, I don't know that it is. I don't know that it
I don't
is
know that it
waived.
is
I
either.
think we have to double check that. I'm not sure that it is.
Okay.
Because you don't enroll in the class. So the only thing that you would get waived is you enroll in, let's say, 12 units, and those get waived based on your meeting the eligibility. My hunch is that whatever this fee is, your Pell Grant could be used to cover it, or something else you have. But I don't know. My other districts, this was not a waivable fee, but that was a local decision, I think, but I don't know.
Okay, so maybe if we can look into those 2 issues, the non-resident fee and the calling that out, and then the credit by examination.
Sure.
Okay,
This is the only one that says that, though, that the fee has to be in line with our unit enrollment fee.
Yeah.
okay.
Whereas the others have different, there'll be different amounts depending upon, like if you've lost the library book, how much is that book worth? We're going to charge you a different fee if it's $100 book or a $30 book. But
Yeah.
this one is specific about being in line with the unit enrollment fee.
Right. Yeah, AP 5031. Okay. Okay, yeah, maybe if we could just look at that a little bit.
Sure.
Okay. Next.
Okay. Yep. One more, and then your pain shall end. Which is going to
Well, this
be,
wasn't too painful.
we're going to look at 6620, which is the naming of buildings. And I turned this one over to Bobby to do the rewriting on this. And it actually got a lot of discussion through the shared governance process, and this is the final version. I think it was just trying to simplify it, but it also, again, leaves the final responsibility for naming or removal of a name from a building to the Board of Trustees.
To the trustees, yeah.
I did have
Okay.
some questions on this, and think that
Okay.
Erica did provide the AP policy to
Mhm.
some of that. The 2 questions that I have, one is about the process. What is the board's role in the process of the amount if attributed to a building, if it's a charitable? Is it?
So basically what happens is the board ad hoc committee is the first committee that looks at that. So if we have a
Okay.
naming opportunity, then I go to the board chair and
Okay.
say, we have a naming opportunity. Would you please identify members of an ad hoc board naming committee?
Mhm.
And so that I can call a meeting so that we can talk about the naming opportunity, and that ad hoc committee reviews whatever the situation is,
Mhm.
and then they make a recommendation that I can then take to the full board.
Mhm.
Like we had an ad hoc naming committee about 3 weeks ago, so that the people who are looking to do fundraising for the Eddie Van Halen statue
Yes.
could share. I wanted the board ad hoc committee to see what these folks had in mind for what the statue would look like. Because I did not want these folks to do all this fundraising
Yes.
and find out that the board doesn't support the design.
Yes.
The ad hoc committee looked at it, had a mock-up of it, the artist was there, and they were very happy.
Right.
So if I came to the board and said, well, I think I want to put, a name on this building and I'm going to ask for $20, the board could say, yeah, that doesn't work for us. So it's really me recommending to the board, and there's the board ad hoc committee first that has the discussion.
Yes, and certainly, there are thresholds to naming opportunities, across the board, how much to name a center, how much to name a classroom.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that to provide that consistency, right? So someone's not giving $10,000 for naming a classroom, and another day it's $50,000 to name a classroom.
Right. Well, I think the key is to keep it as flexible as possible. And you're right, you don't want that difference, right? But the other thing, keeping in mind our DEI focus and wanting to be able to have naming opportunities that are not necessarily all tied to a huge gift.
Sure.
It might be tied to reputation,
Yes.
somebody's work on behalf of the college. By not having it articulated, it must be this amount, it must be this amount, it gives flexibility. What I would say is that as your superintendent president, if I were coming to you with something that was completely out of line, like if I came and said, I think we should name this center for $2 million, I would expect the ad hoc committee to say to me, what is wrong with you? And why 2 million? And I would need to explain it. So I think the goal really is to try to agree to general principle, but not necessarily amounts.
Right. No, I see where you're going with this, because where I was going is really just on the charitable side. So it's not looking at the DEI in terms of, whose names go on buildings. And certainly there's a lot of discussion around that. That doesn't need to be tied to philanthropy. So what I'm suggesting, what I was saying is that if it's tied to philanthropy, then the amounts will be more cohesive.
Right.
Yeah, but I think there should be other criteria.
Right.
Yeah, otherwise it's just a transactional affair. So I think we need to look at, community and there's other aspects. And I think this is also one of the things I see in other universities, that it's not just set amounts. So I'm sure, Tony, you see that differently also at Fullerton.
Yeah.
It was also very important, as this was moving through, that the naming opportunities included facilities, grounds, and programs. Which was not in the previous one. So they expanded this out. And so, and a part of that is because they didn't necessarily always think a monetary contribution had to be made in order for a program to be named after an individual.
Right. Yeah. Any other questions on this?
And the only other thing I want to add is that it's also important that we have the ability to remove a name too.
Of course, yes.
Which was not clear.
Sure.
That we need, that there are times where sometimes names need to be removed. So.
Okay. Looks good. Okay.
Okay.
Is this the end of the agenda?
No.
Okay.
So
pretty close.
Next is the accreditation update.
Okay.
We're just awaiting. The commission met a couple of weeks ago. I expect we'll get our action letter sometime. Crystal? I think next week we'll get it, don't you?
Usually it comes like around after the 1st of July.
Yeah.
We'll see it.
So
we don't expect it to be much different than the verbal that you got. Okay.
nope.
All right.
Okay,
Any questions?
The next one is actually, it's your agenda item, and that is the board meeting agendas. So this is your conversation, so take it away.
Yeah, this is something, Belinda and I have been talking about this, and it deals with our board meetings and how to maybe restructure them a bit. It's nice to start early at 4:30, but I could see us in the future starting at 2:30 and going to 10 o'clock at night. It just doesn't work, especially for me. And I think there's ways which I'd like, and I think Belinda would like this committee to start talking about ways we could streamline the board meetings. And one of the things I wanted to concentrate on today, if you don't mind, Linda, is is presentations by staff, especially. And I see a lot of boards today having templates. We had, as I mentioned at the board meeting, the 2 board meetings ago or board meeting ago, we had 2 staff reports that went on. And staff reports are usually for the public. It's to introduce the public to the agenda item because they don't have all the information. We do as trustees if we've read our material. And some of the PowerPoint slides are like an 18-point type. And as a professor, you can't even do that in the classroom. Why do it to a board of trustees and to the public? And so I'm thinking about, that's really one of my pet peeves. Maybe we should give templates out to staff of what should be on the PowerPoint slides. And I just, and I think Belinda feels the same way, ideas that we can streamline our board meetings. I will tell you, 2 presidents have told me, they said, Tony, why do we have to have oral reports of all the members of the college community? Why can't they be written? And things like that.
We used to get written reports too. So yeah, so I've heard that argument from you, Tony. Okay, Sandra, do you have any comments on that?
No, I mean, I do think that the meetings are a little bit long, and certainly if the purpose is for the staff to inform the board, that can be done prior. But I do think that maybe 5 to 10 minutes is perhaps providing the high level summary of what we need to know.
Yeah.
Is that what you're alluding to, Tony? Yes,
I think Sandra said it exactly. And I also have thought about things like the budget. To me, the budget is so important. And a lot of us don't go to the budget meetings, but maybe we just need a separate meeting just to deal with the budget and get that out, and just the board could ask all of its questions and go through and approve the budget. I don't know. But I am, to be very honest, getting discouraged. The meetings just, there's things, I don't know, it just doesn't click right. Because I sit on lots of boards. I sit on a board with 38 members, and those meetings are like business. And so I think I'd like us to begin a discussion in this committee. We're not going to handle it today, but in this committee, I think Belinda would like us to talk.
Well, I think that you have brought this up before. I think the rest of the board has heard this comment. I don't know that there's disagreement. What I would recommend is, why don't we just write it up as a proposal, and take an action on it at the next board meeting. I don't disagree that reports can be written, and only then if you want to highlight certain things that you can speak verbally. So I did the same thing at the CCCT. We had like 15 committees, so that would have been like another extra day we would have had to meet if everybody gave a verbal report. So I would just write it up as a proposal for the board to take action at the next meeting.
You think at the next? I think maybe we should write it. Maybe write something up, and you, Sandra, and I look at it before.
Okay, right. And if you want to, I mean, we could do it as first reading if you think that the board needs time to kind of chew on this. I think the issue of staff reports, whether or not there should be a template, I don't know. I think I'd like to hear from Dr. Androgenis how you feel about that.
It's your meeting, and I think I completely understand. I am a veteran of the LACCD and the Ventura district, so your meetings are a walk in the park. So I'm probably not the best person to ask, but here, in all seriousness, I feel like my job as the superintendent president is to keep you informed, to give you information, and to, like, we had the past celebration the other day, did go a little longer than I was promised it would go. I understand that. We have added reporting out on DEI agendas, on DEI statewide work. We have added, you know, we did do the consent calendar, so we've collapsed all of that. But I think the question I have for you is, I also don't want to get 4 months down the road and have you say, how come we're not getting any data presentations when we give you data presentations all the time? But now it sounds like you don't really want the data presentations because they take too much time. So you know what I mean? I feel like we've got to figure out what the sweet spot is, because I'm not here to, I want you to have the information you want, but if it means that your meetings are longer and you don't want that either, you just need to tell me what it is you want and I'll do it.
Yeah, but I think Sandra, Sandra was correct. Like, if we could pare it down, because again, these presentations usually are for the public and they don't need an hour. But one of the things when I talk about PowerPoints, I'm in standard PowerPoints, it's just using large type, 3 ideas. When we start getting graphs this small, it's useless.
Well, I think the other issue too, the other question, and this is something the Academic Senate does, is they figure out how much time they're willing to spend on a particular item. And they limit the discussion, the questions, whatever. So the question also is, how willing are you to police yourselves and say, okay, we said we were going to talk about this for 15 minutes. 15 minutes is done, so we're going to move on. Is that something you all would want to do?
Yeah, that's good. Yes, I think.
So this was a recommendation that actually Tammy made, that we put time frames around certain items. So I would suggest that we talk to Berlinda. I can talk to her and let her know. Still do a write-up from this committee to the full board on limiting the number of maybe the report outs, the committee report outs at the end. I think that Erica's point about, we are asking for more data, and frankly, this is part of the DEI movement, is the trustees should be querying the data we have, and asking where are the gaps, and not just receive information and not have a discussion. This is also one of the discussions we're having at the league, is that we find there does need to be more time for discussion, and not just pushing information out. So I think that there does need to be, we need to think about what that means in terms of what our own responsibility is in querying the data and asking questions, good questions, to know whether or not, we're actually achieving our goals and what more needs to be done. And I think that's what Erica's been trying to do. So let's give that one a little more thought. But in the meantime, we come up with I think the staff reports, I think the reports at the end, I think those are no-brainers. The trustees, if anything you have to say, put it in writing. And then if you have to say something, you can take a minute or two to just say whatever you're going to say.
Well, part of this too is that does the staff and the administration, outside of your report, sometimes I feel that this is the only opportunity that the staff gets to report something to the board, that they value that opportunity for us to hear them out in a public manner. So I would just take that into account as we think about how we want to reconfigure the reporting.
The trustees to think about this, because we're the ones that will be here till 10 o'clock at night. So go ahead, Erica.
Yeah, so because what I'm hearing is, not only do you want the trustees to do written reports, but the Academic Senate, the Classified Senate, and the Management Association, you just want them to write something up.
Yeah. Yep, I think that's what we're recommending. Was that your recommendation also, Tony?
Well, I think if they have something important to say, they can say it. But yeah, it wouldn't bother me, because I've spent some time with Citrus College recently. I'm looking at what other colleges do, and they seem to just go a little faster than we do.
Well, Citrus is a lot smaller than us too. Plus they're just bringing in their new CEO. But compare us to LACCD, and like Erica said, we're a walk in the park.
Yeah.
We're not there till 2 o'clock in the morning. So, yeah, let's do a write-up. Why don't you and Sandrick do a draft and let's take a look at it.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can get
no.
together on Zoom before the meeting so we can.
Yeah, I'm not, I mean, I do think that there is something to be said about having staff do the report, verbal report. I think that they really do, and I can be wrong, Erica. I mean, you know your staff and the classified and the faculty. I do think that they appreciate an opportunity to verbally present something to the board. I could be wrong, but I just, that's a sense that I get. There's a lot of pride put into what they want to announce, especially the students as well. So, yeah.
You could treat it like public comment and start the timer and give them exactly 3 minutes.
Okay,
And,
great. Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing you could do if you were open to them actually saying something versus writing it. So you should probably think about that in your proposal.
Yeah, this is not I mean, Erica, I think, is willing to do what we are going to ask.
Yeah,
her to do.
it's
It's up to the
yours.
trustees.
It's
So
your
this is
meeting.
not throwing it back on Erica to decide what we're going to do. If the
Yeah,
trustees want to
totally.
make it shorter, then you come up with a recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll do whatever you want. Whatever you want, we'll do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Meeting schedule.
When do you think we'll need another one, Crystal, for other items?
Well, of course, it depends on what we get from the accrediting commission in July, although I'm pretty sure that's going to be fine. But I have these two to bring back to you, 3250 and 5030. So we might not need a long period of time, and maybe just a short half-hour meeting when we've done our research on that to bring those back to you. So we
Okay.
can get those done this summer.
Yeah, maybe, do you think before our next meeting, we could have a short meeting, or?
So we could bring that issue up
We
then.
could do what
When
we're
we
discussing.
go back and review those two items that Crystal's going to bring up, then if you have a draft that you want to present, is that what you're thinking, Tony?
Well,
Yeah.
it would have to be between now and next Thursday, a week from Thursday, because then I'm going on vacation. No, I'm not. I have time next week and the following week.
Give you vacation?
Yeah, I've maxed out my vacation, so you have to let me go.
No, you should. I don't want you to have a heart attack.
So between now and the second week of July, and then we have
Yeah,
our board
between
meeting
now and
anyway.
July 9th, we can do something.
Right,
Okay.
and we have our board meeting after that, so,
Yes.
okay, we're good.
Yeah, the other thing is that we have learned, thanks to Alex sleuthing, that we can have our board meetings electronically through until the end of September. So I'm going to recommend that we have our first face-to-face board meeting in August, because it would be nice to finally be in the same room for a board meeting.
Are you gonna make cookies?
Of course, I always do.
And will we still have a Zoom option for the public, or no?
No, once September 30th comes, we will revert to what we always do stream. We always stream all of our meetings live on YouTube. So that will never change, but no, there will not be a Zoom option.
Okay, so folks will either need to attend or in person, or they don't get to attend.
Or they watch it on.
Jump
or
to
they
you.
watch
Okay,
it on
I see.
YouTube.
Right, but participants, right? So it's not going to be a mix of, some
Right.
people on Zoom and some people in
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I have to wear long pants again.
Yes, you will.
You and Jim.
Yeah,
Okay, so I think we're towards the end of this agenda, right?
Yeah, we're
Okay,
good.
no new business
Okay.
items? Any new business items?
Nope.
Okay, hearing none, I think we are adjourned.
Thank you, Miss President.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, see